Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. For those that don't know you, would you like to give a bit of an overview of who you are?
Yeah, my name is Chris Knighton. I live in the United States in Providence, Rhode Island, with my wife and 7-month-old daughter. And um, I'm a full-time online-based running coach as well as a high school track and field coach at a local high school that I coach with my wife. I left my old engineering job in 2022 to build my online business, which is Knighton Runs Marathon Coaching. And I've grown a roster of athletes, both local and around the United States and around the world, who are training to run faster marathons. Um, I'm also a competitive runner myself. I never really ran until my mid 20s, but I've really fallen in love with the sport and the effect that it has both on myself, for my own betterment and well-being, and the powerful effect that it has on the young girls that I coach in the high school and the adults that I coach as they train for marathons. So I'm really excited to be on your show, Renee, and see where this conversation takes us.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess, if we go all the way back to the start, what is it about sport and in particular for you running that made you fall in love with it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I always just got a sense of purpose from it. And I don't know what it is about just moving my body through space that's so meaningful to me, but it really, really is. It just provides such a strong sense of satisfaction to feel, I guess, capable of doing the things that I can personally do. So whether that's just going for a run through my city and traveling by foot and running downtown and back to home, it just feels so cool to do that. Or whether that's being in a more competitive environment and pushing myself and running as fast as I can, either against the clock or against competitors, just having that experience for some reason feels so rewarding in a way that I don't I've never quite gotten in the same way from non physical pursuits. It gives a sense of satisfaction that's so different than what I've ever gotten from family, friends, or career, and I love sharing that with others.
Yeah, that's incredible. I can hear the passion in the way you're describing it. What do you think it was last year that made you, make that career change?
Yeah, you know, so I'm 34 now, and when was when I was 19 and literally just a freshman in college, at that point in my life, I knew that I was going down kind of the wrong track with my career. When I was younger, I was really motivated by environmental issues, and I went to engineering school to get involved in the renewable energy industry. I wanted to make a difference through my work in some way. And I was good at math. I liked science, and it just seemed like, hey, I'll become an engineer and I'll change the world through technology and this sort of thing. But I became really disillusioned with that really quickly. It didn't seem like the right thing for me. And when I got out of school and I landed my first job, it was a corporate office type of job where I'd show up to work every day. I had to be there on somebody else's schedule and work on projects that they wanted me to work on. And even when they were projects in line with what I wanted to do, I did do a number of solar energy projects and other energy efficiency type projects. I just never felt like I was making the kind of difference that I wanted to make through that. And I became really disillusioned with it. I worked in a bunch of different jobs, like experimenting in this career to try to find some sense of passion, but I just never could. And I mentioned earlier, I didn't get into running or any sport really until my mid 20s. But when I started to run and found it to be so mm, just I just enjoyed it so much. It was such it gave me such a sense of satisfaction to develop and move physically through space and be able to go faster over time and all that sort of stuff. Um, I knew that maybe one day I wanted to help share this with others. And it was actually when I kind of first started getting serious about running myself that I looked to hire my first coach. It was when I decided to train for my first marathon because I really wanted to take it seriously if I was going to put in all the effort and all the hard work that it takes to train for a marathon and run one well, like the goal that I had set for myself. And I just, I loved working with my first coach so much. It was such a great experience. Um, that and I always had this idea that I wanted to teach and help others. And I wasn't quite doing that with my engineering career in any way that I pursued it. So I loved working with my first coach. Her name was Sam. She taught me a lot, and I decided, hey, you know what, I'm seeing a lot of progress with my own running. I'm gonna try to coach some other folks as well. So I had a few friends who I offered to coach and work with. Really enjoyed working with them, and I pretty much grew this little. It was a side hustle at the time. I didn't like the career I was doing at all. I really didn't. So I just poured all of my energy into this side project of coaching, and I loved it. I really did. People were really happy working with me. People were seeing a lot of progress. I was getting a lot of satisfaction working with my athletes in a way that I never did with any of the corporate engineering type projects I was doing. And I remember one day um, walking home from the grocery store and thinking like, you know, I I would love to make this my career to be a coach. Um, but to venture out on my own and become an entrepreneur and become an independent coach, it's kind of scary. But you know, at this time I was probably 32. I'm 34 now, and I said, you know, 20 or 30 now years from now, if I like didn't try this, if I didn't try to do this full time, I would really regret it. And you know, I was kind of scared to make the jump, but thankfully, and I think this happened for many folks in 2020, COVID was a blessing for me in many ways. Um, it created space in my life and freedom with kind of my work environment where I was able to pour a lot of energy into my coaching. And it grew to a point where I was financially able to make the transition to doing it full time. And that was, I think, it's basically about a year and a half ago now that I decided to quit my old corporate job and start coaching full time. And I'm so happy that I did. I absolutely love what I do every day now. The folks who I'm able to work with, some of them become very good friends. We've been able to, improve how people view about their running, both like the results that they get, the times that they run, the races they complete, but just like loving what they do and really feeling like they are making the most out of running in their sport. It's really cool to see. So that's kind of how I came to be doing what I'm doing. About a year ago too, and this is kind of a very different thing. My wife was looking for some additional work as well, and she wanted to be a high school coach. So she reached out to the local high school. They had an opening for a cross country position, and she got the job. And the athletic director said, we actually need a indoor track and field and outdoor track and field coach as well, and we need the assistant. So, would your husband like to join you as well? So, I was a little hesitant at the time because one of the things for me when I left my old corporate world is I really wanted the independence and autonomy that comes with doing your own thing and running your own business. And I fully get that through my online based coaching. But coaching girls track and field, it's very in person. I'm there every single day with these girls, like 6 days out of the week, often 7 days out of the week. And it's very, I got to be there a certain time every day. It's much more traditional type job, but I absolutely love it. It's so fun. It doesn't feel like work, and just working with the high school girls helps complement what I do working with adult runners so very well. So yeah, now I am really a full-time former engineer, now full-time running coach, and yeah, it's great. I love it. It's really fun what I do every day.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I think it's everyone's dream to do a job where you love it and you don't feel like you're working. And I think what you did was really brave. And I think as well, I don't like running. It's not my forte at all. But I'd love to know what your first marathon experience was like, because it's quite grueling. Like it's tough. It's not something that anyone can sort of do. What was it like for you?
So I had a really kind of odd entry into the world of running. I mentioned earlier that when I was very kind of disillusioned with my engineering career, that I tried a bunch of different jobs along the way, looking for, what's the one company where working in kind of the energy efficiency and renewable energy space, where is that going to like motivate me and make me excited and feel happy? I tried a bunch of different jobs, but in between each of these jobs, I had actually quit. I had quit and taken time off because I didn't like what I was doing. In those gaps between jobs, I did some soul searching and adventures. So in 2014 it was, I quit my job I didn't like, to actually go hike the Appalachian Trail here in the United States. For those who don't know, the Appalachian Trail is a 2,180-mile trail that goes from the state of Georgia to the state of Maine. And I hiked it about 20 miles a day for about 6 months. I had no hiking experience before that at all, but I wanted to go on this big adventure. And that was kind of my first taste of covering long distance. I then proceeded this with like really getting really into hiking. This was before I was a runner, but I became like very, very passionate about long distance hiking and just traveling through space, uh, maybe hiking 20 or 30 miles a day, this kind of thing, and really enjoying it. Then when I kind of settled down from some of those trips and adventures, this is when I transitioned into getting into running. So I actually came into running knowing that I was capable of hiking, let's say maybe 20 or 30 miles a day. So the thought of running a marathon was never scary for me. Like I always knew that I could do it because I was so used to, well, walking it. And obviously walking is very different than running, but I think for most folks the thought of going a marathon is just the distance that's frightening for them. But for me it never really was. It was always just a question of how fast can I do it? Because I know I can do it. Like I have no doubt in my mind that I could go the distance. It's just how fast could I cover the distance? So um the first one that I signed up for was the Sugarloaf Marathon in Maine in the United States here. It's a little known one, but popular locally. It's actually um it goes through the town that my dad lives in nowadays. So it was kind of a cool one to go see, for him to see me run. So I went up there for my first one. This is the race that I actually hired a running coach for because I set the really ambitious goal of trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon in my first marathon. Um, that's not something that now as a coach I would recommend, but I did try to do it in my first one. To do this, I would have to run a marathon in 3 hours, which is fast for someone who's a newbie to running. I'll say that. It's very ambitious. I remember it didn't go well. It didn't really go well at all. Um, in some ways, I was very well prepared. I think my coach had prepared me really well. I had gone through good training. I finally, after I would say long time of kind of haphazardly approaching how I would train for running, the 3 or 4 months that she helped me prepare for this race, we really dialed it in. I finally felt like I learned how to train properly for a marathon and how to um, train like an athlete, not just like someone who runs as a hobby and doesn't know what they're doing. Um, but I quickly learned that the marathon as a distance is humbling and something that you can't master on your first attempt. Um, I think anyone who runs a smooth marathon in their first attempt is kind of amazing and maybe very lucky or gifted. It's a very humbling distance. I thought I ran very well. I ran quick and I was at the pace that I wanted to be. I thought I was very comfortable for about 20 miles. And for anyone who knows marathons, you know that there's a big question mark between mile 18 and 22 of every marathon. So you have to go the full 26, but 18 to 22 is often where the wheels fall off. If you've done anything wrong in the first 2/3 of the marathon, that final third will be horrendous. And mine definitely was. I think I stopped dead in my tracks at one point. I went from running about 640 minutes per mile to literally having to walk. And it was terrible. My dad was there. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, was there. They were actually on the course several times. They saw me beforehand as I was doing well, and then as I was going through this period of suffering, and then in the final stretch when I was just a wreck. And it was a bummer. It was a bummer for sure. It wasn't a disaster. I definitely learned a lot. Uh, and overall, I finished with a respectable finish, but it left me hungry for more, certainly. And it taught me a lot about what I would need to do differently for next time.
Yeah, I'd love to know how you motivate yourself in comparison to how you motivate the people that you coach in running.
Yeah. I think your motivation largely needs to be intrinsic. I think that you need to love what you're trying to do. At least I certainly do. And how I find that motivation though on a daily basis, um, for me, setting goals is really important. And I think with sport, putting a date on the calendar, maybe there's nothing more powerful than that you can do. So what I find with myself, as well as with athletes who I coach, if you've not signed up for any event, then there's no urgency to train and put in the work. There's people who, sure, yeah, you love running and maybe you can go out and run every day or whatever, but you're not necessarily going to have the urgency to train and improve the way you want to unless there's a date on the calendar. So one of the first things that I do with new athletes who I start working with, it's very similar to what I do with my own training. It's like, hey, let's pick a goal for you to go after. And with running, that's pretty simple to do. Most of the adults who I coach, they want to train for a half marathon or a marathon. So for running, you can kind of break your season or your year into two different seasons. There's a spring season and there's a fall season. So a lot of people will do two big main events per year. Maybe one is in April. That could be something like the Boston Marathon, for example. I live near Boston. A lot of my athletes do that race. It's prestigious. People love to do it. That could be your big goal race for the spring. Right now, as we record this, it's January. The athletes who I coach, they're already well into their training for the Boston Marathon. That's a race that's 3 months away at this point, but they've been training for that already for at least the past 6 weeks. But the very fact that they have that on their calendar helps them, every step of the way. What I always find with my athletes is like, if they have nothing on the calendar, I want to fill that spot right away. Like I need to reach out to them and be like, all right, what's the next thing you're going to do? Because if they don't have a thing that they're working towards, I find that people easily get distracted and, aren't able to keep up with what they're doing. So for me, that's one of the most important things is having something you're working towards.
Yeah, I love that. I think, it's really hard to sort of motivate yourself to do something when there's no timeline or deadline. I know I found that even with uni and studying, if it's like, oh, here's something that you need to do, or even just a simple task. If there's no deadline, I'm like, oh, I've got time, I can do it later. And it just keeps getting put off and put off. But, as soon as you add that deadline, it's like, okay, like I really need to knuckle down and get this done now.
Totally. I find that in everything in life too. I find that within my own business, the content I create, for example. Now that I'm a running coach, every Monday, that's the day that I need to do people's training plans. And I literally spend pretty much all of my Monday doing the training plan for everybody for the week ahead. But um, there's a lot of pressure on that day, I'll say, because the days leading up to it, I'm like, oh, Monday, I got to do the training plans. The pressure's building up or whatever. And I just put it off and put it off and put it off. But then when the day comes, I'm like, oh, crap, I got to do it all now. So, um, what I found often with motivating yourself for something that's maybe challenging to do or hard to get started with, um, like for example, I love coaching and I love being a runner, but there's days where I get up and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go through the tedious admin work of doing people's training plans. Or, you know, today I had a 2 mile long run to do. I didn't want to do it really because it's gloomy here, kind of put it off. But what I found in the day to day is motivation comes from putting yourself into it, getting started, getting the ball rolling. Like if you just sit around all day being like, oh, I'm not motivated to run, I'll just wait. And then 2 hours go by and you're like, oh, I'm still not motivated to run. And then you're like, oh, I'll just wait. And then it's like 4 o'clock and the sun's setting here. And I'm talking to my wife and I'm like, oh, Erica, I really don't want to go run. And she's like, go do it. And I'm like, fine, I'll just go do it. And then 5 minutes into the run, I feel great. And I had a great 2 hour long run today. And often I'll do that with, a tedious work thing that I have too. It's like I'll put it off and I'll put it off and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. But once I get into it, it's fun. And or maybe not fun, but like, I get into the zone and you like it and it's good. So you can't just wait around for motivation to come. You just need to like do the thing. And then, if it's something you like to do, then you will get in the zone and you'll like it. So that's my other tip for motivation.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I've definitely found myself in that situation. I'm sure there's many people listening that have too. I'd love to know for like myself included in this. I'm not a runner and it's not something that I have done for quite some time, not since I was in school. For those that don't come from a running background, what tips or advice would you give if they want to start running?
Yeah. So running is really it's a really interesting sport where honestly I feel like it's not as intuitive to do it properly as people would think. I think a lot of beginners make a lot of mistakes with running. You think it's as simple as, hey, you just go out the door and you run, and maybe the next day you try to run a little bit further, a little bit faster, and then the next day you try to do a little bit further and a little bit faster. But this isn't a good way to get into running as a beginner. I would encourage like any new runner who wants to pick up the sport to find a training plan that's meant for beginners and stick to that plan as you get started. And as you do it, hopefully it's a plan where there's some description of like why you're doing the things that you're doing, or maybe if you're working with a coach or in some sort of a community, you can kind of ask questions to figure this out. But a lot of running is not intuitive. As a new runner, you do want to be consistent, but you need to find this balance between working hard and getting the proper amount of recovery so that you actually benefit from your runs. But what I find is that most runners do too much too soon, and it results in them either getting hurt after like a week or two, or just hating it because they think that running is hard all the time. But if you're properly training like the way that an athlete would, and looking to get better, once you kind of get over the hump of the first few weeks, running is like super enjoyable. The vast majority of your runs should not be that hard. They should be pretty comfortable and just enjoyable, and you kind of get that like feeling of runner's high. And then if you want to push yourself a few times per week, you can do these more challenging workouts that yes can be really hard, or not, depending on how hard you do them. But following some sort of a structure and a training plan and understanding why you're doing it, trying to learn that is critical. Just going out and winging it and being like, I'm gonna go run a mile, and then the next day I'm gonna go run a mile faster. That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, I'd love to know if you have an embarrassing sport/running story to share.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just some some of just the failures, I guess, that I've had in some of my races. So I primarily coach marathoners. I've even written a book on marathon training called Run Faster Marathons, but I've struggled a ton in the marathon. It's a really hard event, and that's often why I like to talk so much about it and coach people towards it, because it's really unpredictable. Um, I talked earlier about how in my first ever marathon, around like that 18 to 20 mile mark, I cramped up and stopped dead in my tracks. This happened to me numerous times. Probably the best shape I was ever in my life. I ended up running one of the worst marathons of my life. And I've run some good ones too, but I did this one. It was in 2021. It was the Newport, Rhode Island Marathon. And this was in the period of COVID-19, where there was no races, there was no events. And I was just desperate to do an in-person event. I hadn't done an in-person event in well over a year. And I kept training through that time. But there was just nothing going on. And finally, this one marathon got put on the calendar. So I was training for it months and months and months. I was training for it. It was supposed to be in April. And then a few weeks before, apparently the town council of the city of Newport decided they don't want to hold this marathon. So they're going to postpone it. Everyone who was training for it had to modify their training. They didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if it was going to happen or not. It's really frustrating. Anyway, they ultimately rescheduled to May, so a month later. So we'd all extended our training for about a month for this race. I think I had been training for this race for like 6 months. It was literally the only thing happening that year. So when the time came to do it, I was in fantastic shape and I was really eager to run a fast time. Again, I the first like 20 miles of this race, I ran incredibly well. I had a friend who was an old teammate of mine running alongside me for the vast majority of this race. We got to like the mile 17 mark, and I start to feel this twinge in the back of my calves. And as it goes on, it just feels worse and worse and worse. We go up this one hill, and I'm still with my friend, and we're just like chatting, everything feels good. And then as we come down the hill, um, I gain a little distance on him. Like I'm like, oh, I still feel good, but I'm just managing this calf thing. And then with one step, my right calf just fully seizes up. And I literally, again, stopped dead in my tracks. Got a full Charlie horse in both of my legs. And my friend runs by and he's just like, hey, Chris, everything okay? And I'm like, no, my race is done. I'm totally done. Um, and it was bad. It was bad. I was on track to run about a 240 marathon in that one. And I ended up finishing in about a 305. I went from running about a 6 flat mile to literally doing, I think I did like a 16-minute mile at one point. It was painful. I basically walked the last 6 miles. It was so bad. Um, I don't know. It just stunk. Embarrassing in the sense of like, I was definitely in the best shape of my life for sure. And I've tried hard to get back to that shape, and it's been a struggle because I worked really hard to get there. But the thing is, even when you're in really good shape, and even if when you think you're doing everything right, in the race, both mentally and physically, um, things don't always go the way you expect them to. And I don't know, it stinks, but that's just kind of what happens with sports sometimes. There's not you can't necessarily control everything, and I think often the marathon distance, one of the main things that's such an allure about it is there is so many unknowns. There's so many things like this, like cramping that totally ruins your race uh, after you've run for 2 hours. um, that just it doesn't happen in the shorter distance races. That's never happened to me. It's never really happened to anyone I've coached in anything except a marathon. But it can happen in a marathon, and yeah, I mean, you put like 6 months into training for this thing and wanting it to go perfect, and then it doesn't. Uh, so it's a mixture of like embarrassment because you feel like I'm a lot better than this, but it's also I don't know, it's humbling, and can't take myself too seriously with it either.
Yeah, and I
So
think that it's really good advice. You can put in all this hard work and there's still things that can happen that are completely out of our control. And unfortunately, as you said, it is sport. It would be really nice if we could control everything, but unfortunately we can't. I love to do 3 questions to every guest that I have on. And the
yeah,
first one is, what is something that you're most proud of about yourself?
yeah, I think it's just being willing to make make decisive decisions to kind of create the life that I want to live. Earlier when we were chatting, we talked about how I remember clearly, like I had the opportunity to become a running coach. I'd created this spark of a business, but I still had the safety and security of kind of my full-time job. The running coaching thing was fun but uncertain. I loved it. The corporate job was not fun, uh, but I guess kind of secure. But just being willing to take that risk and take that chance, I think every time I've been in a position in my life where like something seemed kind of scary, but I've been willing to make the decision to go for the scary choice, my life has gotten better. Whether that's, you know, um, because leave my job to go hike the Appalachian Trail, or deciding to become a running coach, or deciding to um, ask my wife to marry me, or have a kid with her. All these things have been scary, but they've all led to a life that I'm really happy with right now. So yeah, I'm proud of that. I think to create create a life that you love takes bravery, because it's often not the easy choice to make.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. The next question I have for you is what is your favorite quote and or the best piece of advice that you've been given?
Yeah. So you said earlier, um, control what you can control in sport. And I think that that is so true. I think though it's important to have goals, what's going to get you to those goals is establishing good habits in your life that are going to lead you towards them. So, you know, let's say your goal is you want to qualify for the Boston Marathon. That was mine and one for many of the athletes I coach. Don't just focus so tightly on that. You know, don't focus on like, oh, I need to do this, and to do this, I gotta like run this time and run this 26 miles at this pace. Don't focus on that. Just focus on, you know, how do you become a better athlete? What are the things you need to do on a daily basis to do your best? And how do you enjoy that and love it, so that every day you're doing something to get a little bit better that's going to lead you towards your goals. um so if you're controlling what you can control, establishing good habits and love the process, you're going to get where you want to go. It's just a matter of time. So I think that, focusing not on the destination, but kind of like the day to day, that's the best advice that I have for folks.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And the last question I have for you is, do you have any tips or any other advice that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Yeah. I think with running, I love running. For anyone who's out there listening who wants to get more involved with running, there's tons of great resources out there. I actually give out a free copy of my book on my website. If anyone would like to download it, you just go to knightonruns.com, and there's a big button you can click, and you can download a free ebook copy of my book. It's called Run Faster Marathons: The Proven Path to PR. And if you sign up for that, you'll also get on my newsletter, where I kind of send out weekly advice to become a better runner as well. But so I'd recommend that to learn what I do, and you'll definitely get on the right direction with running. But really, just get on a good system, believe in it, see it through, enjoy what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and you're going to improve, and you're going to work towards your goals, and you'll eventually reach them. So uh, do what you love. And if you love running, then I don't know.
No, I love that. I think I thank you for everything that you shared with me today. It's been awesome. I think, there's some really great advice in there, take that leap of faith and use intrinsic motivation and those sort of things. I think it's great. And I'm sure there's many people out there that are listening that can take that on board. I know it's definitely some things that I would love to implement in my life as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Renee.